For 3 months, Naomi poured free coffee for 4 stone-faced men at her diner, the scariest regulars she had ever served, and never once asked who they were. She had no idea they were reporting everything back to Park Soo-hyun, the most powerful and dangerous Korean crime boss in Chicago. When a violent loan shark put a death threat in her hand and gave her 2 weeks to produce $15,000 she didn't have, those same 4 silent men she had been quietly taking care of sat her down and changed her life. Within 11 days, she would be standing at the county clerk's office, sliding a gold ring onto her finger and becoming the wife of a man she had barely spoken to. Because the most feared criminal in the Midwest decided that marrying her was the only way to protect her completely. But what nobody saw coming was what she would do to him in return. If you love stories like this one, stories about real love found in impossible places, subscribe to this channel right now and hit the bell. We release new Afro-Korean romance stories every week, and you do not want to miss a single one. Now, let's get into the story. Naomi Carter was 31 years old, and she had already made her peace with a quiet life. She worked the morning shift at Lena's Diner on Caldwell Street on the east side of Chicago. It was a small place, 8 booths, a counter with 6 stools, a coffee machine that coughed every morning before it came alive, the kind of diner where people left their coats on their chairs and called her by her first name. Naomi made it feel like home. That was her gift, and she gave it freely. She remembered things. She remembered that old Mr. Benson needed his eggs soft with no salt because of his blood pressure. She remembered which mother came in on Fridays with a toddler who needed extra napkins and a little grace. She brought birthday cake from her own pocket sometimes, a single slice with a small candle, and set it on the table with a smile that made people feel like someone had been paying attention to them all year. She had a 1-bedroom apartment above a bookstore, a cat named Biscuit, a plant named Clarence, and a younger brother named Marcus, who was 24 and had been making dangerous choices since he turned 19. She loved Marcus the way you love someone who keeps walking toward the edge of a cliff, with your heart in your throat, every single day, but underneath all of it, underneath the warmth and the free birthday cake and the way she made everyone feel seen, Naomi carried something she had never said out loud. Her father had walked out when she was 9 years old. Her mother had worked herself to exhaustion raising them and had passed when Naomi was 26. Every person she had ever fully loved had either left or been taken. So Naomi had made a quiet decision, the kind of decision you make without realizing it. She would give kindness to the world in small, safe doses. She would not let herself be chosen, because being chosen, she had learned, was just the beginning of the story about being left. She did not know it yet, but that belief was about to be completely destroyed. The 4 men first came into the diner on a Tuesday in early March. They took the back booth, the big one near the emergency exit. Dark coats, no conversation. One of them had a scar running from his jaw to his ear. Another cracked his knuckles slowly, one by one. Naomi's co-worker Destiny pulled her aside near the coffee machine and whispered, "Girl, I am not going over there." Naomi looked at them. Then she picked up the coffee pot and walked over. She poured 4 cups without being asked. She set down a small plate of creamers they hadn't requested. She looked at the one who seemed to be in charge and said simply, "Let me know if you need anything." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he gave a small nod. They left a $20 tip on a $12 tab. They came back Thursday. They came back the following Monday. Within 3 weeks, they were in the diner 4 days a week. Always the back booth. Always the same 4 black coffees. Always quiet. And Naomi always brought the coffee before they had to ask. Once, she noticed one of them rubbing his temple the way a person does when a headache has been sitting behind their eyes all day. She brought 2 aspirin in a tiny paper cup. No fanfare, no explanation. The one with the scar, whose name she would eventually learn was June, looked at the aspirin for a moment. Something moved in his face. Not a smile, more like a door, cracked open just a little. "Thank you," he said. Of course, she said and walked away. She never asked who they were. She never tried to get close. She just treated them like people. And for these 4 men, that was everything. What Naomi did not know was that June and the others were part of the inner security detail for Park Soo-hyun, the head of the Park Syndicate, one of the most powerful and quietly dangerous criminal organizations operating across the entire Midwest. They moved money, controlled territory, and maintained an order the police never fully understood. They were not violent for sport, but they were absolutely prepared to be violent when necessary. Their boss had not come to the diner. Not yet. Marcus showed up at the counter on a Wednesday evening, 20 minutes before Naomi's shift ended. He sat down and ordered nothing. He was wearing the same hoodie he'd had on 2 days ago, and his knee was bouncing under the counter like a motor that wouldn't shut off. Naomi refilled the napkin holders and waited. She knew that knee bounce. She had been reading it her whole life. "What did you do?" she said quietly. "Know me." He looked up at her, and his eyes were scared in a way that made her stomach drop. "I need you to not be mad." "Marcus, I borrowed some money." He said it fast, like speed would soften it. "From a guy? I had a plan to pay it back, but the plan didn't—" "How much?" Silence. "Marcus, how much?" 11,000. Naomi set the napkin holder down very carefully so she would not throw it. She breathed through her nose. "From who?" He said the name. Dre, short for Draymond Hicks. Everyone on the east side knew that name. Dre ran a loan operation out of a warehouse near the rail yards, and the stories about people who couldn't pay him back were not stories you told around children. "He added interest," Marcus said. "It's almost 15 now, and he gave me a deadline." "When?" 2 weeks. She looked at her brother. Still so much like the 10-year-old who used to climb into her bed during thunderstorms. She wanted to shake him. She wanted to hold him. She wanted to sit down on the diner floor and cry. But Naomi did not do any of those things. She looked at her brother and she said, "Go home, lock your door. Don't go anywhere alone. I'll figure it out." She had $4,000 in savings. She made $14 an hour plus tips. She had no family to call, no one to borrow from, nowhere to turn. She did not know how she was going to figure it out, but she always faced toward the problem. She always had. What she didn't know was that the problem had already found her. The next morning, she unlocked the diner at 6:30, and a man was leaning against the wall outside. Not June or any of the regulars. A bigger man with a tattoo on his neck and flat, empty eyes. He pushed a folded note into her hand without speaking and walked away. She read it standing on the sidewalk in the cold. "Your brother owes Dre. Now you owe Dre. Don't make us come find you." Her hands were completely steady. Inside, she was terrified. She went in and made coffee. She opened the diner. She smiled at her first customers. That was what she did. She held herself together in public so well that nobody could see the cracks. She had been doing it since she was 9 years old. But when June and his men came in at 9:15 and settled into the back booth, something in her was different. She brought the coffee. She set down the creamers, and as she turned to leave, June said quietly, "Something is wrong." It was not a question. She stopped walking. Her first instinct was to say she was fine. That was always her first instinct. Carry it alone, don't burden anyone, don't need anyone. But she was so tired. And something in June's voice was not prying. It was just honest. She turned around. She reached into her apron and laid the note on the table. Jun read it. He passed it to the man beside him without a word. Neither of them changed expression. But the air in the booth changed. It shifted the way air shifts right before a storm rolls in. "Sit down," Jun said. 2 hours later, June handed her a clean white card. "Come to the Jisoo building on Wentworth Avenue at 7 this evening. Park Soo-hyun will see you." "Who is Park Soo-hyun?" she asked. Jun looked at her with those steady, dark eyes. The man who can make your problems stop. At a cost, she said. She was not naive. Yes, June said. He didn't try to dress it up. Naomi looked at the card. She thought about Marcus's scared face. She thought about $15,000 she didn't have, and 2 weeks that were already counting down. She thought about a life spent carrying every heavy thing alone. She tucked the card in her apron pocket. 7 o'clock, she said. She had no idea what she was walking into. She only knew she had run out of other choices. She changed out of her uniform after her shift and put on a burgundy blouse and black slacks. She told herself she dressed up because it seemed like a professional meeting. She was not going to admit, even to herself, that her hands were not as steady as they looked. The Jisoo building was not what she had expected. She had pictured something dark and threatening. Men in doorways. Visible guns. Instead, the lobby looked like a law office. Clean lines, dark wood, low light. A woman at the desk nodded at her and said, "Ms. Carter, 11th floor." The elevator was quiet. The 11th floor was one large office. City lights filled the windows behind a wide desk. And standing at those windows, with his hands clasped behind his back, was a man. Park Soo-hyun did not turn when she walked in. He was in his late 30s. Dark hair brushed back from a face with clean, serious angles, a charcoal suit with no tie. He had the posture of someone who had spent decades making sure his body never showed doubt. "Sit down, Ms. Carter," he said. His English was clear and precise, with a very slight accent. She sat. He turned, crossed to the desk, and sat across from her. He looked at her the way someone looks at a file they are reviewing. Steady, thorough, unreadable. Naomi looked straight back. She was not going to look away first. Something moved in his face. Barely. But it moved. "Your brother borrowed money from Draymond Hicks," he said. "Hicks operates in our territory without our sanction. We have been watching him for some time. He crossed a line when he threatened someone connected to my men." "I'm not connected to your men," Naomi said. "I just serve them coffee." He was quiet for a moment. "You served them for 3 months," he said carefully. "With no agenda, no fear, no questions. You treated them like people." He paused. "That is rarer than you know." She said nothing. "I have a proposal," he said. "Hicks's debt will be absorbed and cancelled. Your brother will be moved to a safe location outside the city while Hicks is dealt with. Approximately 3 weeks. During that time and beyond, you will be under the full protection of my organization." He let a beat pass. "In return, I need a marriage. On paper. Legally binding, but in name only. It gives my organization a clean reason to extend protection to you without raising questions from competing parties. It also resolves a matter involving my father, who has been pressing me to formalize a personal commitment." His jaw tightened on that last part. "The arrangement can be dissolved in 12 months. Naomi sat very still. "You're asking me to marry you," she said. "I'm offering you a solution," he said. "Those aren't the same thing." He looked at her. Something in his controlled eyes shifted. Just for a fraction of a second. Like a man who is not used to being corrected. "No," he said slowly. "They are not the same thing." Naomi looked out at the city below. She thought about her small apartment. Her brother. Her savings that weren't enough. Her habit of carrying everything completely alone. She thought about 31 years of deciding not to need anyone. Then she looked back at him. "I have conditions," she said. He waited. "My brother gets regular contact with me. Not just safety. I want to hear his voice." She counted on her fingers. "My job at the diner stays. I keep my life. I'm not becoming someone's kept wife in a building somewhere." Another finger. "If anyone in your organization disrespects me, I leave. Protection or no protection." She lowered her hand. "And you will not lie to me. Not about the danger. Not about what is happening. Not about anything that affects me. I would rather have a hard truth than a comfortable silence." He studied her for a long moment. Then he picked up a pen and wrote something on a notepad. He turned it to face her. He had written all 4 conditions in a numbered list. Neat, exact. Agreed, he said. She had walked in expecting to be afraid. She had not expected to feel, underneath all of it, something that felt almost like being seen. Her first mistake was not making those conditions. Her first mistake was not understanding how dangerous it was to be truly seen by a man like Park Soo-hyun. They were married 11 days later at the county clerk's office. Jun was the witness. The whole thing took 14 minutes. Naomi wore the same burgundy blouse. She told herself it was practical. He wore a dark suit. He did not smile during the ceremony. But when the clerk reached the part about the ring, he slid a thin gold band onto her finger with a steadiness and care that felt unexpectedly sincere. She looked down at her hand afterward. The ring caught the light. She moved into the Jisoo building that same evening, a separate suite on the 9th floor. Its own kitchen, its own living space, a window that looked south over the whole city. It was more beautiful than anywhere she had ever lived. She stood in the middle of it for a long time. Then she thought about her plant sitting alone on her old windowsill. She called Jun the next morning and asked if someone could collect her cat and her plant. Jun arrived himself, 2 hours later, carrying Biscuit in the carrier and holding the small potted succulent called Clarence in both hands like it was something fragile and precious. Naomi laughed. It was the first real laugh she'd had in days. It came out big and surprised even her. Jun looked at her with that door-cracked expression. The plant was heavier than it looked, he said. This was obviously not true. Clarence was a very small succulent. She laughed again. Don't tell the others I carried a plant, Jun said. I have a reputation. She took Clarence and said thank you, and for just a moment the two of them stood there like two people who had both decided a long time ago that the world was not to be trusted, and who were both, very quietly, starting to wonder if they had been wrong. The arrangement was supposed to be simple. She would live in the building, keep her shifts at the diner, and wait for the danger to pass. Park Soo-hyun would handle Dre. They would be polite but distant. 12 months would pass. Then it would be over. That was the plan. But nothing about what followed was simple. A car came every morning to take her to the diner. A clean, dark sedan driven by a quiet man named Henry who liked talk radio and never made her feel watched. She kept her shifts. She smiled at her regulars. She brought old Mr. Benson his soft eggs with no salt. From the outside, nothing had changed. But Jun and the others were around more now. She learned all their names. Jun, the leader, with his scarred jaw and his code of loyalty. Seo, the quiet one who turned out to cook better than anyone she had ever met. Daeho, who fixed things without being asked. A loose cabinet hinge, a dripping faucet. Because he noticed when something was broken. And Rio, 27 years old, who stood guard in the corridor and read romance novels on his phone when he thought no one was watching. Naomi said nothing when she spotted the flower-covered cover on his screen. She simply left a second book outside the suite door the next day, with a note. Thought you might like this one next? The book disappeared within the hour. No acknowledgement. But the following morning, a small box of pastries from the Korean bakery on Maple Street appeared outside her door with no note at all. She smiled at that door for a full minute. She was building something she had not planned to build. A thread connecting her to each of these men, one small act of kindness at a time. She didn't realize yet that they were doing exactly the same thing with her. And somewhere 2 floors above, Park Soo-hyun was aware of all of it. He said nothing. He kept his distance. But a man who ran an organization the way he did noticed everything. They moved around each other like 2 planets in separate orbits, close enough to feel the pull, careful enough to not cross the distance, until the night of the dinner. His father flew in from Seoul on a Thursday. Park Jin-soo was 70 years old, silver-haired, and carried the kind of authority that no longer needed to raise its voice. Soo-hyun came to her suite that afternoon and knocked. She opened the door. He was formal, suited, but there was something different in the set of his shoulders. A tension she had not seen before. "My father will be at dinner tonight," he said. "He will ask you questions. He will test the edges of this arrangement." He paused. "You do not need to perform. Just be yourself." She raised an eyebrow. "Is that advice?" "It is an observation," he said quietly. "Being yourself is disarming. I have noticed that you do it without trying." She didn't know if he meant it as a compliment or a tactical note, but something about the way he said it, carefully, like he had been sitting with the thought for days, made something shift quietly in her chest. She told that feeling to mind its business. At dinner, Park Jin-soo sat at the head of the table and watched her with eyes that had spent 7 decades noticing things. "Tell me about yourself, Naomi Carter Park," he said in clear English. She nearly corrected the name. Then she stopped herself. "I grew up on the East Side," she said. "I work at a diner. I'm good at my job. I love my brother. I have a cat named Biscuit and a plant named Clarence." The old man tilted his head. "Why Clarence?" "He looked like a Clarence when I bought him," she said simply. "He had that energy." Park Jin-soo laughed. A real full sound, not what she expected from him at all. Across the table she caught Soo-hyun watching her. His expression was still unreadable, but he was watching her with his full attention, the way a compass needle points north without deciding to. She looked away first. She wasn't sure why. After dinner, his father pulled her aside in the corridor. "You are not afraid of my son?" he said. "No," she said. "Most people are." "Fear isn't very useful in a diner," she said. "If you're scared of a customer, you can't hear what they actually need." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "He was not always this cold. There was a woman, years ago. He trusted her. She passed information to a rival group. 3 of his men were killed." He said it simply, not asking for pity, just stating a fact that had shaped everything that came after. He closed after that. A door swung shut, and it has not opened since. Naomi stood in the corridor for a long moment after he walked away. She thought about a man who had learned that trusting someone could cost other people their lives. She thought about what kind of weight a person carries after something like that. And then, with a recognition that surprised her, she thought about how it felt to decide that needing people was simply too dangerous to risk. She and Park Soo-hyun had made the same decision, just from different disasters. She didn't know what to do with that yet, but she could not unknow it. The call from Marcus came on a Friday morning, and it was not good. He had slipped out of the safe house. He was 24, bored, restless, and terrible at staying put. Dre's men had spotted him. He had managed to get away and was hiding in the bathroom of a convenience store 3 miles from where he was supposed to be, scared and breathing hard. Naomi called Jun before she finished the sentence. Seo and Daeho were with Marcus inside 11 minutes, but Dre already knew where Marcus had been. He knew the Park Syndicate was involved. And Dre, reckless the way men are reckless when they have never faced real consequences, decided to escalate. 2 of his men came into the diner at noon. Naomi was pouring coffee for a table of construction workers when she looked up and saw them push through the door. She recognized one of them, the man who had handed her the note. Rio was already at the counter. He had been there every day since the arrangement began, sitting with a coffee, blending into the background. When the 2 men walked in, he went completely still, like a held breath, like something that had made a decision. The bigger man walked up to the counter and leaned toward her. "You tell your husband," he said, low enough that the other customers couldn't hear, "that Dre doesn't move for anybody, not even Park Soo-hyun." Her heart was knocking hard against her ribs. She could feel it. But Naomi had been a waitress for years, and she had learned one true thing in all that time. The way you hold your body in a hard moment tells the room everything about who you are. She held her body like it had no fear in it. "I'll pass that along," she said, clearly and calmly. "Would you like coffee while you're here?" The man blinked. He looked at her like she was a problem he had not studied for. "No," he said after a moment. "Then I'll need you to leave. You're taking up table space." They left. Every construction worker at the window booth watched them go. Rio called it in immediately. That evening, she would learn that Soo-hyun had asked him to repeat the last part twice. She told them to leave, because they were taking up table space. Soo-hyun was waiting in the corridor outside her suite when Henry dropped her off that evening. That was new. He was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, and his expression was different from anything she had seen on him before. It was not the controlled boardroom face. It was something more direct. Like he had dropped something he usually carried. "Are you all right?" he asked. "I'm fine," she said. "You were threatened in your workplace." "I've been threatened in my workplace before. A man once threw a plate at me because his eggs were runny." She met his eyes. "I've survived worse." He looked at her. "That is not reassuring." "It's honest," she said. And then she remembered what his father had told her, and she said, more gently, "I'm okay, Soo-hyun. I'm actually okay." Something shifted in his face. Small, but it changed the whole meaning of his expression, the way one word can change the meaning of a sentence. "Come inside," she said. "I'll make tea." He went still for just a moment. Then he uncrossed his arms and followed her inside. A month ago, he wouldn't have come through that door. Now he couldn't seem to stay away. They sat at the small table by the window. Biscuit wandered over, sniffed at Soo-hyun's shoe, and decided he was acceptable. Then he sat down directly on the man's foot. Soo-hyun looked down at the cat. "He picks a person," Naomi said. "You've been selected for the evening." Soo-hyun reached down, slowly, carefully, like someone performing an action they were not sure they remembered how to do, and placed his hand on the cat's back. Biscuit purred. Naomi watched his face. The controlled expression had shifted into something she had no other word for except quiet. Not the cold quiet of keeping people out. A different kind. The quiet of someone who had just put something down that they had been carrying for a very long time. "My father told you something," he said. She didn't deny it. "He told me, you weren't always like this." Silence. "He was not wrong," Soo-hyun said. She wrapped both hands around her mug. "I'm not asking you to explain anything. I just wanted you to know. I understand. The part where you decide it's safer not to let people close." He looked at her. "You understand that?" "I've been doing it my whole life," she said simply. "I love people in small doses. I give kindness, but I never let anyone in where it could hurt. I told myself it was smart." She paused. "I'm starting to think I was just scared." He was quiet for a long time. "She gave information to a rival faction," he said finally. Just those words. But she understood that from him, in this moment, those words cost something real. "I know," she said quietly. "I'm sorry." 3 men, he said. 3 men who trusted me. And you trusted her. "Yes." "That wasn't a failure," Naomi said. "That was love. Love can be used against you. That doesn't mean you were wrong to feel it. It doesn't mean you should stop." He looked at her across the small table in the low light, with the city spread out below them and a cat purring on his foot, and for a moment she could see past all of it, past the controlled face and the empire of dangerous loyalties and the years of building walls, and what she saw was simply a man who had been hurt and had never let himself heal. "You are," he said slowly, "a very unexpected person, Naomi." She smiled. "I get that a lot." She thought the evening would end there. She thought that was as far as either of them would go, that they would both pull back to their careful distances. But the truth was beginning to settle into her bones whether she wanted it to or not. She had spent her whole life making sure she was never truly chosen. And somewhere in the past few weeks, without planning it, without even noticing, she had let herself matter to someone. Several someones, actually. A man who carried her plant like it was precious. A young guard who left pastries outside her door without a note. A cold, closed, quietly devastated man who now sat in her kitchen with a cat on his foot, telling her things he had not told anyone in years. Her second mistake was thinking she could still walk away from this if she chose to. Because the danger was not finished with them yet. Dre made his final move on a Sunday night. He sent 6 men to the Jisoo building. He had made a catastrophic miscalculation about what that meant. Naomi was in her suite. She heard nothing. She knew nothing until Jun knocked on her door and said, with complete and practiced calm, "There is a security situation. Please stay away from the windows. Do not open this door for anyone except me or Soo-hyun." "Is he?" she started. "He is handling it," Jun said. "He is fine. You are safe." She sat on the couch and held Biscuit against her chest and counted her own breaths. She thought about what handling it meant in this world. She thought about all the things she had not asked and all the things she had decided not to know. She thought about a man who had built his whole life around danger, who had lost people to danger, who still walked toward it every single time because that was who he was. The hour was the longest of her life. Then she heard his knock. 3 beats, even and unhurried. She opened the door. He was wearing a different shirt than he'd had on before. She noticed that immediately. She did not ask about it. He was standing straight, unhurt, and his face when he saw her, standing there with the cat still held against her chest and her eyes not quite steady, did something she had not seen it do before. It opened. Fully, unmistakably, without strategy. "It's done," he said. "Dre's operation is finished. Your brother is coming home tomorrow. He is safe." Naomi let out a breath that had been sitting in her chest for 3 weeks. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. She looked up at the ceiling. That was what she always did when she was trying not to cry. It never worked. "Thank you," she said. The words came out smaller than she intended. He stepped forward, and then, very carefully, very gently, he took both of her hands in his. His hands were warm. She had not expected that. "Naomi," he said. She looked at him. "Whatever happens next," he said carefully. "Whatever you decide about this arrangement, I do not want you to stay out of obligation. Or fear. Or because you think you are simply a problem I solved." He paused. His jaw tightened. "The day Jun told me about the threat Dre sent you, I was already aware of your brother's situation. I had been watching Dre's operation. I could have handled it without you ever knowing I was involved." He looked at her directly. "I chose to come to you personally. I chose the marriage. I told myself it was strategic." A beat. "I was not honest with myself." Her heart was loud. "Soo-hyun, you have been in this building for 3 weeks, he said. "And in that time I have had more honest conversations than in the previous 3 years combined. You left a book outside Rio's door. You brought June aspirin without being asked. You told 2 of Dre's men they were taking up table space." Something escaped him then. A sound that was almost a laugh, and completely astonished. "You are the most quietly fearless person I have ever met. And I have spent my entire adult life surrounded by men who walk into danger for a living." She looked up at him. Her hands were still in his. "I'm not fearless," she said honestly. "I was terrified every time. I just know that the way you hold yourself tells people who you are. So I decided a long time ago who I was going to be in hard moments." "Then who are you?" he asked. Quietly, like the answer genuinely mattered to him. She thought about it. "I'm someone who spent a long time deciding not to need anyone," she said. "I think I'm done with that decision." The space between them had become very small. "I am not good at this," he said. And she could feel how much those words cost him. From a man who was good at everything, who controlled everything, who showed weakness to no one, those 5 words were enormous. "I'm not good at it either," she said. "But I think between the 2 of us we've got enough damage to understand each other." He looked at her for a long, steady moment. Then, slowly, like a man who has been standing on one side of a closed door for years and is finally turning the handle, he lifted her hands and pressed his mouth to her knuckles. Warm, steady. A promise made without a single word. Then he pressed his forehead against hers. They stood like that. Just two people leaning into each other in the quiet, in the low light, in the city that had tried to break both of them and hadn't managed it. Stay, he said. One word. But the way he said it, low and unguarded and completely honest, held everything in it. Not a condition, not an arrangement. A request from someone who was choosing, for the first time in years, to ask for something he actually wanted. Naomi closed her eyes. She thought about being 9 years old and watching her father drive away. She thought about her mother, gone too soon, who had loved them both so hard even when she was exhausted. She thought about Marcus and his bad choices and the way she loved him anyway. She thought about 31 years of giving love in small, safe doses so it could not destroy her if it was taken back. She thought about all of that. And then she thought about this. A man who had come to her door not because the danger was over, but because he needed her to know that she was real to him, that she was more than a solution. Okay, she said, soft, certain. He pulled back just enough to look at her face. And then Park Soo-hyun, this serious, careful, quietly broken man who had spent years making sure no one could touch the center of him, kissed her. It was not a performance. It was not a strategy. It was honest and warm and real, the way it feels when a door finally opens that you have been standing on both sides of for far too long. Naomi Carter, who had spent 3 decades making sure no one could choose her deeply enough to hurt her, kissed him back. And for the first time in her life, being chosen did not feel like the beginning of being left. It felt like an arrival. Marcus came home on Monday morning. He showed up at the diner during her shift, sheepish and tired, wearing new shoes that June had apparently made him buy because the ones he'd been wearing were, in June's exact words, embarrassing. Naomi hugged him for a long time. He let her. Destiny watched from behind the coffee machine and said, "Okay, but who is the man with the cheekbones on the pavement outside?" Because Jun was standing out front and Jun did, in fact, have exceptional cheekbones. Naomi told Destiny it was a very long story. The end of her shift, when Henry pulled up in the sedan, there was a small box of pastries from the Korean bakery on Maple Street sitting on the back seat. A note in careful, precise handwriting. The red bean ones are the best. Naomi held that note for a moment. Then she smiled at it like she was smiling at a person. In the weeks that followed, things changed slowly and then all at once, which is how the best changes always happen. Jun, Seo, Daeho, and Rio became, in a way nobody announced, something like family. Not because anyone declared it. In the way it always happens, people who go through hard things together, who keep showing up for each other in small ways, who start leaving food outside doors and fixing broken hinges and exchanging books through silent agreements. Seo cooked, Daeho repaired things, Rio finished the second book and left a third in its place. Jun stood at the door every morning like a man who had decided something and was not going to be moved from it. And Soo-hyun came to the diner. Not every day, but enough. He took the back booth. He ordered black coffee and eggs. She brought them without being asked. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in the same silence and neither of them felt the need to fill it. And that was its own kind of closeness. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that just settles in and stays. He told her about his father's expectations, about the years that had carved him down to something hard and useful. About the woman who had broken his trust and the men he had lost, and the door he had shut and never opened again. She told him about her father leaving, about learning to love in ways people could take with them when they went, about her mother, about the quiet ache of building a life that was designed, without realizing it, not to need anyone too much. You are not like that anymore. he said one evening over coffee. No, she agreed. I'm not. Because of what happened? She thought about it. Because I decided to stop, she said. The danger didn't change me. Choosing to trust someone with the hard stuff did. He looked at her. I am still learning that. I know, she said. You're doing okay. For him, those 3 words were everything. 6 months after they signed a 14-minute marriage at the county clerk's office, Naomi stood at the window of the 9th-floor suite and looked out at the city and thought about the woman who had stood on a cold sidewalk reading a threatening note and decided, as she always had, to carry it completely alone. She had believed, down at the very foundation of herself, that being chosen by someone was only the beginning of the story about being left. She had been completely wrong. Being chosen, when it was real, when it was honest, when it was not a performance or a strategy or a convenience, being truly chosen was its own kind of miracle. Not because it removed the fear, but because it proved the fear had been wrong all along. Biscuit meowed from the couch. Clarence, sitting on the windowsill, had grown 2 new leaves. Naomi felt he had earned them. And downstairs she could hear June and Seo arguing about something in Korean, and then Rio saying something that made both of them stop. And then laughter. Real laughter, from men who did not laugh easily, rising up through the floors of the building. She smiled. There was a knock at the door. 3 beats. Even and unhurried. She already knew. She opened it. Soo-hyun was standing there without his jacket, which was still remarkable to see. He was holding takeout from the Korean place on Cermak and wearing an expression she had never seen on him before all of this. The look of a man who has stopped trying to look like he doesn't feel things. I thought, he said, we could eat dinner at home tonight. Home. He said it simply, without thinking. And then she saw the moment he heard his own word. A brief stillness in his eyes, waiting to see if she would correct him. She opened the door wider. Come in, she said. He came in. He set the takeout on the table by the window. Biscuit settled in the empty chair between them like a small, unhurried mediator. The red bean ones? She said, looking at the bag. And the galbi, he said. And the teokbokki, because apparently Marcus has been texting Rio for 2 weeks, and Rio relayed a very specific request. Naomi burst out laughing. Marcus texted Rio? Rio taught him something in Korean, he said. I am choosing not to know what. They ate. The city moved below them, and Naomi Carter, who had grown up on the east side, who poured coffee for a living, who had named her succulent Clarence, who had faced down loan sharks and mafia politics, and her own lifelong terror of needing anyone, sat across from her husband in the truest sense of that word, and felt, for the first time in 31 years, that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, not because she had been rescued, because she had chosen to stay. And across the table, Park Soo-hyun looked at her the way he had been looking at her for months now, the way a man looks when he finally understands what it is he almost walked away from. And he was grateful in a way he did not yet have words for. He was still learning how to say it, but she could see it. She had always been good at seeing what people actually needed. And what he needed, she finally understood, was exactly what she had been afraid to want for herself. To be chosen. To stay. To be known all the way through. And to have it be enough. It was. If this story moved you, if you felt every part of Naomi's journey, we want to hear from you in the comments right now. Tell us your favorite moment. And if you are not yet part of our family here, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. We have many more Afro-Korean romance stories coming, stories made for you, to watch at night, to feel something real. Thank you for staying until the very end. We will see you in the next one.